Alrighty, so our question today says, in is this picture a picture of homologous or analogous structures? Type your answer in the box. I'm going to put the link in the chat if you need it, and then give you a few moments to answer. The link is now in the chat. Take a few minutes to type your answer. Alrighty, so what I am seeing in the chat is people are still typing. I'll give you more seconds. All right, so I'm seeing a mixture of analogous and homologous structures. Do we know the difference between the two? Did we do our assignments yesterday? I'm seeing some no's, I'm seeing some yeses in the chat. Did we watch the videos I left for you? Okay, so I'm getting some yeses and I'm getting some no's. All right, so high points from yesterday, things that we were supposed to have done yesterday. I'm actually gonna show you guys this video. For those of us that didn't watch it, it's not a very long video. However, it does explain a lot of the information that we need to know. Whoop. Go back. There we go.
Thanks for stopping by. Today we're talking about the differences between homologous structures and analogous structures. So this is a topic you may come across in biology or evolution. Let's talk about homologous structures first. So homologous structures have a similar structure, meaning their anatomy or the bone structure is similar. They have a differing function, so a wing versus an arm versus a fin, for example. And they form from a common ancestor. So they have a common ancestor that gave them that structure. Analogous structures, on the other hand, have a differing structure, so they do not have a similar anatomy, but they do share a function. It's a similar function, so wings, fins, things like that. And they do not form from a common ancestor. So let's look at some examples of homologous structures. So the arm of the monkey and the fin of a narwhal. Those would be homologous structures because they are a similar structure but have a differing function. Again, the wing of a bat and the leg of a mouse would be homologous structures. Some analogous structures examples. You can look at a bird, the wing of a bird versus the wing of an insect. Definitely a similar function, but not the same structure and not from a common ancestor. Again, another example, the fin or wing of a penguin and the fin of a shark. They both use them to swim with, so a similar function, but a different structure. To remember homologous.
So, with this, differences are homo means same. So just like last year when you guys did homozygous and heterozygous, homo always means same. So with this one, you're looking at the same structures is what you're looking for. So what are the pieces of the animals that are looking like they are the same and that they may have had some ancestor that was in common? Where your analogous structures come in is they may have different structures, but they all have similar functions. But that means that they do not have a common ancestor. So what is the answer to our question? Is it a homologous, or is it an analogous structure? You can type it in the chat. It's fine. All right, correct. It is an analogous structure. Similar function. They're both used to fly, but they are built very different. They have very different parts. Okay. The other one we had, the other video, I'm going to show you this one too. It was on vestigial structures. And it's not that long, so we're going to watch it too.
Tyler's always been a little space crazy, so White Hat Jr. is the perfect fit for him. So his amount.
Thanks for stopping by. Today's video is a follow-up video from last week's homologous and analogous structures. And this week we're talking about vestigial structures. Now, vestigial structures are left over from evolution. They're a structure that used to have a function in an ancestor species, but is useless now in the modern species. So the first example we're going to look at is in humans, and that's the erector pili muscle. And the erector pili muscle is responsible for giving you goosebumps when you get the chills, or when you have an adrenal response because you're feeling anxious or scared about something, and you get goosebumps. And animals now, they still do this, but their fur puffs out. You look at bears and monkeys and things like that, and they do it either when they're cold to stay warm or when they feel a threat to make themselves look bigger. But for us, it doesn't work that way, right? We don't have enough hair to make it have an effect, so it's really useless for us. But anciently, if you look back at our ancestors, they used it for the same purpose that many animals do today. The next thing we're going to look at is the coccyx, or the tailbone. Again, in humans, it's not functional at all. It serves no purpose. If you went without it, you'd be totally fine. But it's there all the same. And again, it shows a structure left over from our ancestors which had tails. And then the last one we're going to talk about is the baleen well. The baleen well has this remaining hip joint here, which is reminiscent of its ancestors, which had forelimbs. Of course, the whale has no forelimb or anything there, but it still has those bones from the hip joint. Okay, so that's all. Hopefully that helped. Let me know if you have any questions, and let me know what you guys need.
All right, so that was our analogous structures. So those are structures that are still prevalent in species, but they don't really have a function. They just kind of show us like how remnants of things that our ancestors once needed. So big examples of those are going to be like wisdom teeth. We don't really need our wisdom teeth anymore, largely because our ancestors didn't used to cook their meat. So I don't know if you guys cook at home or anything like that, but if you've ever cooked at home and you've ever cooked like chicken, you'll notice that it's a lot easier to cook chicken than it is to cook raw chicken. It's way more chewier. You kind of have to saw it a little bit more or have to have a really sharp knife. But like if you eat a hamburger, when you go to bite into the hamburger, you use your front teeth to bite in, but then you use your back teeth to chew. Our ancestors, because they didn't cook their meat, they needed more teeth to help grind and chew their food so that they could actually swallow it. But we don't really need those anymore. So a lot of people get them taken out. Some people's they get infected, or they're turned the wrong way, or they just overcrowd your mouth and can cause some pain. So you don't really need them anymore. So a lot of people kind of get them removed. Your appendix, you don't really need anymore. Your coccyx, which is also just your tailbone down here, and yes, it does hurt if you break it, but it doesn't really serve too much of a function. It anchors some muscles, but it doesn't really have that large of a purpose anymore. So those are some of the key things from our lesson from yesterday. All right, we're going to skip around this PowerPoint a little bit, and I'm going to come back to some stuff. I'm also about to set your PowerPoint to self-pace, so if you would like to self-pace it, you can, or you can just follow along with us. That's perfectly fine too. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with variations. So yesterday you learned that, this whole week we've been just talking about how things have changed in general when it relates to evolution. So we talked about Darwinism and how his whole idea of things gradually changing over time, and survival of the fittest, and like the best genes are going to be the ones that get passed on to future generations, as well as this idea of variation and things being different. It's kind of where we are today. So variation itself, excuse me, y'all. Nap time's calling my name. Variation refers to the differences between individuals and species. So if you look at this picture of these walnuts, we have some walnuts that are divided in fours. Some of them look almost like perfectly divided in fours, but some of them are in thirds. They're all walnuts. They're just divided differently. Their shells are shaped a little differently. Some of them are bigger than others, but that's just a variation within them. That doesn't mean that they're a different type of walnut. They're all kind of the same thing. But variations are going to increase the diversity in the species. So sometimes it can increase its ability to adapt or to survive in certain places and spaces. But just variation just kind of helps out organisms in general. So the source of this variation is going to be through our DNA. I know last year you guys talked about replication and reproduction and how all of this happens. So DNA, we know, is the blueprint for all of our different cells, and it contains all of our genetic codes and informations. This is where a lot of your genetic variations are going to happen in species that are reproduced through sexual reproduction. We know that asexual reproduction, you usually only have one parent, and it just kind of splits and new ones are formed. So kind of like starfish or potatoes, that you're able to, you can cut a potato in half and it can spore and make new potatoes. They're not necessarily the same as people or animals or certain plants, because there are they reproduce through sexual reproduction. So last year you learned that you get your genes, half of your genes from your mom, half of your genes from your dad. Well, your mom and dad also got half of their genes from their mom and dad. So there's a mixture of genetic information that's kind of floating around in you, because you technically, like I say, get half from your parents, but you also get a fourth from your grandparents. You do. So what happens with our variation is there are genetic codes or genes that are sequenced together that tell you everything about your genetic makeup, from the color of your hair to the color of your eyes, how tall you're most likely to be. Everything about you is coded in your DNA. It's like a blueprint that tells you where everything kind of goes. Sometimes you have mutations there. It could be that like their ABCAA, it could be that these got flipped around, and now one set of genes doesn't correctly line up. That could cause a mutation. It could be that they skipped one, so now you're missing a gene. It could be you have an extra gene and you're not supposed to. So mutations happen. They happen all the time. Some of them aren't really that big of a deal. Some of them kind of completely change genetic makeups and how things are supposed to be. It just depends on what it is. All mutations are not bad, but some of them can drastically change kind of what's going on. But they do also create variations. So, but these variations amongst individuals within a species is what's going to lead to something that is called biodiversity. We talked about bio, how it means life. Diversity just means a variety or differences. So that's kind of what it's just talking about, the differences in life on the earth. So having these different variations does make things different, and it makes things a lot of times stronger in certain environments. So if we're talking about I don't know, tomato plants, and there is a tomato plant that's able to withstand colder temperatures. I know in the springtime, my grandmother, she used to plant a lot of plants and flowers and all the rest of that. And so when it's springtime, sometimes it'll be really pretty outside during the day, but then at night it gets really cool. So you could end up getting frost and all kinds of stuff because it's not quite summertime yet, but it's warmer, but not quite as warm as the summertime. So we used to have to go outside and put these like tarps or like these sheets or stuff over her plants at night so that way the frost wouldn't kill her plants. Well, if she had a plant that was more resistant to those temperatures or able to live in those temperatures, the bees could come around, butterflies could cross-pollinate some of those different plants and end up giving some of those genes to newer plants. And then they may not have to be covered because they're able to live through those harsher conditions. So biodiversities can help different organisms kind of adapt or adjust to different disturbances or natural disasters or anything that kind of goes on in that area. That kind of ties into our peppered moth lab that we looked at on, was I think Tuesday, where you had those moths that were the light ones were able to blend in with those birch trees in the beginning, but then when the Industrial Revolution came in and kind of changed the color of the tree bark, it ended up changing which moths were more prevalent to be seen. So now instead of all the dark moths being eaten, it was more so the light moths being eaten. But the moth population, because of its diversity, was able to still, withstand the changing in the environment, but that just means a different type of moth got eaten and allowed other types of moths to kind of flourish and grow and do all of that. So when it comes to this whole population with evolution, it does take a long time for that evolution to happen, but ultimately populations can evolve to meet the needs of the new environment. So it could mean that a new species develops. It could just mean that it mutates and now has a new trait or a new organisms, but a lot of times that is going to create a new species of whatever the animal or the plant is. Whoop, skip one. All right. Yes. So with the changes that happen, maybe I skipped two. I skipped a bunch. I'm going in the wrong direction. My computer's acting so silly, y'all. All right, there we go. All right, so with our diversity, it takes a while for this to happen. This is not something that just kind of happens over time. So if we have a organism that is having to change because the overall environment changed, then it will continue to change. If we're talking about those birds that were on the Galapagos Islands, we were talking about how certain birds had the ability to eat certain types of food in certain places. Well, if the food is not available in one place, then either the bird is going to have to move to a place where they can find the food, or they're going to have to adapt to be able to eat the food that is in the area. That happens with a lot of land-dwelling creatures, because birds can kind of fly from different places, but a lot of the land-dwelling ones don't necessarily do that. The species that don't have the good genes for the area, those are going to be the ones that die out. Some of them do go extinct, depending on what they are, but then that can also lead to a new organism being made. So a few days ago, we watched that brain pop on human evolution and how you remember that phylogenetic tree, and it just kind of showed how the species of human kind of changed throughout time. That's what happens. So organisms that have the more desired genes or the more desired traits are going to be the ones that actually live and are able to give their offspring the next set of genes. Just like we were kind of talking about that short-necked giraffe. If it does not have a long neck, then chances are it's not going to be able to eat and grow to become an adult. So because it didn't reach adulthood, it's not going to be able to reproduce. So you're not going to have a whole bunch of short-necked giraffes walking around because they don't usually make it to adulthood to be able to reproduce. It's the ones that have those desired traits and those strong genes that end up making it to reproductive age and are able to pass their genetic information around. So over time, natural selection is going to kind of cause the frequency of traits to change in a population because it is going to, like the one of the other videos we watched said, it's more so survival of the better set of genes. If your genes of those giraffes are allowing you to have long necks so you can actually reach the food, you're more likely to survive than the genes of a short-necked giraffe that's not eating food. So that's where that kind of goes. All right. Better traits are going to lead to more common species. Sometimes those traits become adaptions, where they're able to change to fit the needs that they have to live and survive in their environments. One of the examples could be drought. In certain areas, there's water is not readily available. So if you think of animals that live in like a desert or a savanna, they don't have the same access to water as some of these other areas do. So organisms that are able to live and survive in the area with with a less amount of water are probably going to be the ones that are able to live, and they're also going to pass those genes that I'm not gonna say inhibit, but that make it so that they don't need as much water to survive on to future generations. So their offspring also won't need a whole lot of water to survive. Um, when it comes to those frequency of traits, here's another example with back to those birds. Birds that have large beaks tend to use them to eat larger seeds. If you are in an area and you're a small bird and you're in an area where there's only large seeds, those small birds with small beaks are not going to survive because they're not going to have anything to eat. And you have to be able to eat and make energy and all stuff to grow and, kind of go into adulthood and have the ability to reproduce. But if the environment changes so that there's only small seeds and there's not very many large seeds, then the birds with the small beaks are going to be better adapted for that environment. A lot of times, if not just birds, but if organisms can't find the basic needs that they need, like shelter, because they have to be sheltered from the elements, they also have to be sheltered from predators. If they can't find food to eat and water to drink, then they're either going to move and change their environment because most organisms want to survive, or they are going to just die because they're still looking, but they just never really find it. So adaptions is pretty much what organisms need to do so that they can actually survive to fit the environment that they're in. So in the box that's on here, I want you to think about an adaptation that would make you the best at your favorite sport or activity. Me personally, when I was in high school, I used to play basketball and I used to run track. I've been, for those of you, you have never met me. A lot of you have never met me in person, but I'm a 6 foot female, which is fairly tall to be a girl. Pants never fit right; it's really hard to find them. But I am a 6 foot female. So a lot of times when I played basketball, I ended up kind of down low and in the paint. I was never one of those people that was, I mean, I know how to dribble, I know how to shoot jump shots. I'm also a coach, so I know how to teach people how to do all those things. But when I was growing up, I was never trained to be anything but a post player. However, when I changed my environment and I went to college, I was not the tallest person on the floor anymore. So I should have been training to be like a 3 guard versus being like a 4 or a 5, which is a post player. So if I had an adaptation, that would probably be my adaptation. Either I needed to get taller so I could keep my skill set and do what I needed to do in the paint, or I needed to develop a better jump shot and better ball handling skills so that way I could have actually been a lot better as a 3, because I was a really small 4 in college. It's really small. Yeah, I am. I'm tall to be a female, but at the same time, I'm not as tall as most post players in basketball. Even female post players, a lot of them are like 6'4" or like 6'5". There's yet I'm even though I'm tall for female, I'm short for that position on a basketball court. Just like with football, there's height. Not height regulations, but there's certain like ideal heights for certain positions, and so that's the case with basketball. So I either needed to get taller or I needed to get a better jump shot. So it's kind of what needed to happen for me. Um, you're gonna be a 6'3" point guard. Well, the thing is, like, sports has changed so much since I played. Um, Whereas before, when I grew up, they kind of trained us to be more position specific. But now we train people to be athletes. So, like, we train, like with basketball, we train everybody to shoot jump shots. Everybody can dribble the ball. Everybody, if you get in here and crash these boards and get in this paint. Where did I grow up? I grew up in Alabama, but I also grew up like I graduated in 2003. So I graduated before some of y'all, like right before some of y'all were born. So, but during that time, like I was playing like high school basketball when, let's see, no, when I started playing basketball, Jordan was still playing. When oh, UConn's up there. Okay, UConn. But when I wanted to go to college and play for Pat Summit so bad at UT, that was my lady, but I didn't go. I didn't go to UT, but it's one of those things that growing up during that time, like when Scottie Pippen was playing, when the WNBA started, and Lisa Leslie, and Rebecca Lobo, and all of them were playing. It was very much so you have a specific place to play on the court and that's what you're going to play. The game is not like that now. The game is you're athletic and you can play a 3, 4, or 5. Look at LeBron. LeBron can go bang in a post if you need him to, but he can also come run the floor and be his point guard. So, I mean, that's the kind of athlete that people are training in basketball. But I was in that weird, like, that connection piece that it didn't always stay that way. And so that would probably be my adaptation. I definitely need better ball handling skills, and I need it to be taller or a jump shot. One of the two. So it just depends on, I mean, because like I said, they changed the game. So getting taller would have helped me stay in my spot, but having better ball handling skills and having a better jump shot would have better prepared me for the way that basketball is played now. All right. So, side note, random basketball talk. I told you I'm random at times. I really am. Let's see. What adaptions? Being taller so I can ride roller coasters. I understand that. I have a lot. Well, I do, but I don't. A lot of my friends, whine about that because they couldn't necessarily get on them, and I've always been tall. So it's no fair. You get to get on there, we couldn't. Sorry. If I was stronger, because then I could hit harder and pitch faster. Okay. Speed and how you breathe. You can actually fix that. Speed training, for real. Look at Usain Bolt. He's a really tall guy. He is very tall to be as fast as he is. Most super tall people are not that fast. But I was a tall, fast person, but now I'm not nearly as fast because I don't really run anymore. I don't. And so, being able to run for long periods of time, having long, skinny legs for soccer, being more agile so I can run the ball, football. Okay. You want to do track, but you have asthma. I had a lot of kids that had asthma on my track team. Just got to make sure you have the pump, man. You got to have your asthma pump. Good coordination and speed would be great for soccer. Definitely. I would definitely need stamina issues because y'all do a lot of running in soccer. I tried soccer once and it was too much running for me. It really was. I ran track too. My top was like 800 because I got 2 laps in me, and that's it. There's nothing further than that. Not gonna work. All right. So, lastly, when it comes to animal adaptations, we have different ways that animals are going to adapt because at the end of the day, animals want to live and they don't want to die. So they have to come up with ways to fit in with their environment so that way they don't die. Either it's because they get eaten or to be able to hunt so that they can eat. But some of these things Yeah, I did. I definitely had the track team running around the halls. It was raining outside, and we had to practice. So it was relay practice. It was fun times. But camouflage is used to blend in with the environment. So if you look at this fox right here, he blends in so well with that environment because it's white. Now, if it was him hanging out in the desert, he definitely would have got picked over because he wouldn't have blended in with that environment. Defense, having something sharp or being able to sting or being able to bite is definitely an adaptation. So porcupines, how they have their little quills and they can splinter you if you come and mess with them. Also, there are certain lizards that are able to like break off like their tail and it can bounce around, and predators will think they have the lizard when they really just have the tail of the lizard. You can have beaks or teeth for feeding, speed, so that way they can actually catch the prey. The way that they move, are they flying around? Are they bipedal, meaning they walk around on on 2 feet, or are they quadrupeds and they walk around on 4 feet? Just the way that they move could be an adaptation. Mud skippers are actually a type of fish that happens to be able to walk on land. They can. So those are definitely adaptations for them. So that is the end of our notes today. What you are going to do for your practice, they are not in the same document today because your practice was done kind of in a PowerPoint, and it would be hard to put that in your document. So it's separated today. So once you have finished your notes, you're going to submit your notes to Canvas. So if you're already done, it looks like this. If you're already finished, then you're going to go ahead and submit them online to Canvas. If you have not quite finished them, you can go ahead and continue to work on them. The second thing that we have to do today is our adaptions graphic. It is also in Canvas. It's right after genetic variations. It looks like this. You're going to click in and open it. It's going to make a copy for you. Once you get your copy, the only thing you have to do on this first slide is change the stuff that is in white. So you need to identify a structural adaptation. Find a picture and insert it here. Identify a physiological adaptation. Find a picture and insert it here. It tells you exactly what these things are, so that way you can know exactly what you need to put here. You're also looking for a behavioral adaptation, and then you put your picture here. As far as genotypes and phenotypes, we just talked about, we recapped that from 7th grade. We talked about how your genotypes is your genetic code and how things are made up, but your phenotype is what the organism is actually going to look like. So what would an adaptation be that is related to its genetic code versus the way that it looks? All right. And then for this one, for our genetic variation and our adaptations, we did have a definition in our notes today. You're going to type your definition here. Do not find something random on Google, because y'all keep finding the wrong stuff on Google and just putting it in there. And a lot of times it doesn't even match up. And yes, we know. I know exactly when you do that. And then you're going to find a picture of what you think a genetic variation is and insert it here, and then find a picture of an adaptation and insert it there. Lastly, we have 3 questions, and these are definitely questions based on how you feel about the topic. So you can, as long as you back it up with reasoning, then you'll be fine. So what is the relationship between a genotype and a phenotype? Number 2, is it better to have a lot of variation? Give a reason why and explain. And then number 3, what is the relationship between genetic variation and an organism's ability to adapt to its environment? So that is what we are doing with that. Once you are finished, you are going to submit that assignment on Canvas as well, and you will be done for this particular assignment. Does anybody have questions? Anybody at all? If you are watching this and you have a question, please send me a message to my inbox and I will answer it for you.